tell us what inspired you to write your book.
I was inspired to write this book, one, because of what seems to be a tremendous divide between people of the diaspora and Africa. Secondly, I was inspired to write this book because there seems to be a tremendous breakdown in the awareness of the greatness of African and African Americans. And as a result, we have bought into the story and the stereotypical knowledge of others. And for some reason, we find ourselves adapting and following others' agenda versus working on our own agenda.
When you were writing the book, I see the title, Overcoming Evil with Good. For some, that may be self-explanatory, but tell us a little bit about what that title means to you.
Well, overcoming evil with good means that we know that God is good. We know that there's been a lot of evil done to people of Africa and people of African descent. When you think about slavery, when you think about segregation, when you think about white supremacy, when you look and think about exploitation of Africa, all of the inhumanities that have been done to us, that creates a bitterness and hurt. Now, in that state of bitterness and hurt, it is difficult for us to really move forward. And so overcoming evil with good is suggestive that in order for us to move forward, we have to forgive those who've done evil against us and then give God the opportunity to move tremendously in our lives.
And Bishop, when you were writing this book, when you were, as you said earlier, putting pen to paper, what did you learn?
Oh, I learned, for example, I learned something about the economics of African Americans and that of Africa. For example, I learned that here, African Americans, the GNP for African Americans, something like $1 trillion a year. That makes us like the 9th wealthiest nation. When you take African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, you're talking 2.5 trillion, almost surpass the economy of Australia. Then I also learned about the wealth of Africa. I learned that if you were to unite Africa, then Africa becomes the wealthiest nation in the world. For example, when you put the two major economies together, that is America and China, it comes out to be 5.08 trillion. Whereas if you had a United States of Africa, it comes out to $41 trillion. I learned those kinds of things. I learned how with the 50 plus countries in Africa, you have only 3 of those that do not have oil, diamond, bauxite, and all these minerals. And so the continent is very, very wealthy. So what's the problem? The problem is the divisiveness among us, the exploitation of the continent, and just what has happened here in the diaspora to African Americans who have all this intellectual power, but because of the breakdown, they don't connect. And so then, imperialists and exploiters take advantage of that. I'm writing this book for Africans in Africa, Africans of the diaspora. I'm writing this book for our youth, our children, our adults, and leaders who are not fully aware of the big, big debt we owe to God for blessing us, and we are not utilizing it effectively.